Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very glad to be back. I was here yesterday for the rehearsal. And I'll tell you what we were rehearsing. We're rehearsing this new show. My name is George Gobel. I just thought I'd tell you that there. We're having this new show, and it's George L. Gobel, really, but the L doesn't mean anything. It's just so that I can have GLG embroidered on my shirts. That's pretty slick right there, because that keeps my stuff from getting mixed up at the laundry with Greta Garbo's. My father's name was George Gobel also, and it's a funny thing, but he never got his stuff mixed up at the laundry with Greta Garbo's. I mean, some people just... Although I will say this now, that he did look a little silly one time in a pair of Greer Garson's culottes. But that's beside the point. Now, my grandfather's name was George Gobel, too, which is largely due to the fact that his father's name was George Gobel. And his father's father's name was George Gobel, and his father's 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 name was George Gobel, and his father's 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 name was Prince Valiant. So there you are. And here I am, and here's the show.
Dial Shampoo, the new shampoo that gives your hair a diamond sparkle. And mild, fragrant Dial Soap that stops perspiration odor before it starts. And now Dial brings you from Hollywood, George Gobel. In the George Gobel Show. Starring George Gobel. With his guest, Mr. Fred McMurray. Miss Peggy King. John Scott Trotter and his orchestra. And here, of all people, is the great, 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 great-grandson of Prince Valiant.
Now, you can see that I wasn't lying to you. See, that's the kind of fellow I am. Honest, straightforward, trustworthy, dull. Well, I'll tell you the kind of fellow I am. If you want to know the kind of fellow I am, I'll tell you just the kind of fellow I am. See, I'm the kind of a fella... See, like if I hear somebody on the radio say, run down to your neighborhood store, well, I run. Well, you can laugh, but a lot of people walk. I run, because in the first place, I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, and them fellas on the radio, they know whether you walk or run down to your neighborhood store. Because them storekeepers, they all belong to Tom Mix's straight shooters, and they report all that stuff right away. And that's the kind of show this is going to be. Nobody's going to be running around here on a dead run and telling you a lot of big lies. Like me. See, if I tell you a lie, I'll tell you that it's a lie. Unless I'm lying, of course. Which I won't. I mean, I don't anymore, hardly. Now, this show, I want to tell you what it's about and what it's like. It's kind of hard to see. It's a sort of a, well, you might call it a comedy show, is what you might. Now, you might call it a lot of things before we're through, but that's what we're going to call it, a comedy show. We figure it's our show. We'll call it whatever we feel like calling it. We'll call it a comedy show. But, I mean, don't get the idea that this is the greatest show in the world, or, I mean, it's not hilarious, maybe jocular, or well, it might just keep you from getting sullen. I'm going to have to tell you a few things that we're going to have on the show. Now, for one thing, we're going to have chorus girls. I think they're nice. And, of course, most variety television shows have chorus girls, but I think we have been very fortunate in that particular regard, because we have a wonderful... Well, I mean, they're right back here now. This is our chorus, and we'd like for you all to meet them. Curtain, please. would like to announce to you sports in the audience that some of these girls aren't married. Now then, what are you girls going to sing for us?
We don't sing.
Well, I'll be a dirty bird. You dance then?
No, we don't dance.
Well, do you play musical instruments or ride unicycles or do close order drill or anything like that?
We don't do anything.
Oh. Well, see, that's what I was telling you just a few minutes ago. That's why we hired these girls, for their honesty. Now, another thing that's very important in any musical show or any variety show is the music. And I think that I don't like to brag on myself usually, but we do have one of the finest musical directors who ever shook a stick. I mean, he's a Toscanini, a Kostelanetz, a Stokowski, and a Tweet Hogan all rolled into one. And I'm sure you all know who I'm talking about, John Scott Trotter. Mr. John Scott, how are you, John?
I thank you, sir.
Sir. Sounds like we have a little of the Duke of Paducah rolled in there, too.
Well, I thank you, George, for those comparisons you made in my introduction, but, you know, I'm a little puzzled. Who is Tweet Hogan?
Well, I'll be a dirty bird. Tweet Hogan is a very fine musician friend of mine from Chicago. He had a society band back there.
Really?
Wonderful band. It wasn't a big band. 9 pieces.
9.
All drums. Well, they weren't drums, really. They weren't drums. They were tom-toms is what they were.
You mean all 9 men played tom-toms?
Ever Tom, Dick, and Harry. These boys you got back here, this is a good lively bunch, John, you know what?
Thank you.
They really, and they keep good time, too, you know what? I know, I timed them before. They keep very good. What's this, the music
This
here?
is the music, George. All new stuff, all new arrangements for the show.
That's good. Do you mind if I look at it?
No, go right ahead.
You got some dandies here. I was looking at it. Here's one. We had an old cow who wouldn't give no milk, so we sold him. So here's another one. The bullfight fans all shouted "Olay" as the bull ripped Hernando's hideaway. Hey, how about this one right on top? Is that pretty tough? I mean...
No, what's that? I'll see if the boys remember it.
All right.
Number 1, gentlemen. It's funny to some of you, but you can't blame the fellow. Now, after all, 17 years with the same show. 17 years, man and boy. Bing was a man and Gary was a boy. And now, ladies and gentlemen, while Mr. John Scott Trotter is trying to pull himself together, I say there's a project right there. We would like you to hear a word from our sponsors. And incidentally, that's another important thing if you're going to have a television show is sponsors. In fact, you can't hardly even turn a crank until you get one. And I want to tell you, we have 2 of the nicest crank sponsors the show ever had. Like the Dial Soap folks, for instance, they have a little movie that they're going to show to you now. And as they hardly ever used to say in the Navy, now see this. Now, about that big oil well contest, I feel it's only fair to tell you that, well, some of you people are going to lose. Now, the next thing that a variety television show requires is a very fine guest star, and we're delighted to have as our first guest that very handsome, one of the most popular and handsome leading men in pictures today, Mr. Fred McMurray. You know, that's right. This dude is handsome.
George, you're too kind.
No, I'm too short.
Well, George, this is your first show, and I Just want to wish you all the luck in the world, because you're
Thank
a
you.
real fine fellow.
Thank you.
And, George, just to kind of help you get things rolling along, I brought this.
Please, there'll be no smoking in the studio.
George, this is a saxophone. You do expect me to play, don't you?
Well, Mr. McMurray, we really don't. To
Just
tell you
call me Fred, huh?
Yeah, well, Mr. Fred, to tell you the truth, that's one of my pet peeves as far as television is concerned. They invite a guest star over, and then they make him work. And if you invite somebody to your home as your guest, you don't make him work.
No.
Isn't that right? So I'll tell you what we want you to do. We want you to come over here and sit down and just make yourself at
Well,
home.
now, wait a minute, George. You know, whenever I'm invited out, I'm usually asked to play the saxophone, and...
Yeah, well, that might be all right for some of them wild Hollywood parties.
Well, how about the clarinet, then?
No, I don't believe so.
Well, I'll tell you, how about a card trick? I've got some...
No, we can't. We don't have...
I know what I can do. I can do a scene from Caine Mutiny. I just happen to have the boat outside.
And you don't seem to understand you're our guest. Now, just sit down here and just help yourself to the cooking, will you? Just take it easy. Everything is going to be all right.
George, do you mean that you're paying me to come on this show and all you want me to do is sit here and eat cookies?
You're our guest.
Well, I'll be a dirty bird.
Now, look, Fred, I'm going over and introduce the girl singer. And they're the best kind, you know. Now, our sponsor wanted for a girl singer a sweet, wholesome, typical American girl, just like the girl that lives next door. And I was thinking pretty good at the time. I went home on a dead run, and I got the girl that lived next door to me, and here she is. Now, you can see how that didn't work out too well. So I did the only thing that a good, clean-cut, red-blooded American boy would do. I moved. A little moving music, please, John. And this is the house that I moved next door to. And you can see that's not the worst move I ever made.
Hello.
Good evening. I'm the typical American boy that lives next door.
Next door?
Uh-huh.
That's a pet shop.
Yeah, well, I'm a typical American eager beaver. What's your name?
Peggy King.
Oh. Would you like to sing on my television show?
Oh. Uh-huh.
What would you like to sing?
A song?
I don't know how that goes. Maybe
I know how it goes, George.
Fred, look, we're trying to tell you that you're supposed to be... Will you just... wait here just 1 second, please. Sing, Peggy.
No.
Now, come on.
Wait, Peggy, wait. Look, George, I have a recitation I could do. It'd be very appropriate at this time, you know, with the World Series and all. Casey at the bat.
Fred, it's real nice, but you're supposed to be our guest. Now, why don't you come down here and eat me a cookie?
Tear my pictures up and burn them. I don't want them, don't return them. If you do, there'll be the devil to pay. Burn 'em up, and blow the ashes away. When you told me we were through life, I went out and found a new life. Find my old love letters tied up and blue. Burn 'em up right away, whatever you do. I wrote 'em, I sent 'em, I thought that I meant 'em, but I was a fool to write. My new love would burn up if those letters turn up. So please get a match and let 'em go up in smoke tonight. When you come to town, don't phone me. Make believe you've never known me. Gather up the records we used to play. Burn 'em up, and blow the ashes away.
That was a wonderful arrangement.
Thank you.
It was really fine. I just have one little criticism.
What's that?
Well, I thought you might be able to use just one more saxophone.
Fred, look, you're supposed to be our guest. Prominently.
I know I'm your guest. I know
Why don't
this,
you come
George.
over
I
here
know.
and sit
Look,
down like you're-
it just isn't right my getting all this money and doing... I am getting the money.
Sure, you're getting the money,
Well,
but
all
you
right,
don't
then
have...
all I can say is that I feel very guilty taking the money and not
Don't
doing anything to
give it
earn it.
another thought. Just sit here and behave yourself and concentrate on the cookies.
I don't want to.
See, I'll tell you what,
George.
you better concentrate because if you get one with a pink center, you win a left turn on Wilshire Boulevard.
George, tell me, how did you get into this business?
Well, I'm glad you asked me that, Fred. You see, up until about 7 or 8 years ago, I was in the Army, and then right after I was separated, I should say, well, I'd used up my muster and out check, and my final pay, and my savings, and my wife's savings, and my 3.5-month-old boy's savings, and I cashed in my war bonds, and I took all the beer bottles back, root beer, that is, and it got to a... Well, things got pretty grim. So this one morning, I was in my apartment... See, this is my apartment, but it's not really my apartment. See, like I say, we're not going to tell you any lies here. This is a facsimile. Oh. And it's not even what you call a reasonable facsimile, because the kind of apartment we had them days, well, you just can't hardly get them no more. But anyway, here's me. I'm in bed this one morning. That's one thing I learned in the Army. Sleep, boy.
George. George, get up. It's 11 o'clock in the morning.
Well, Alice, now that I've seen what it looks like one time, don't ever wake me at this unearthly hour again.
George! You've got to be the breadwinner. Don't you understand? In civilian life, the husband has to be the breadwinner.
Alice, believe me, I was down at that bakery shop all day yesterday, and my number didn't come up one time. You know, I believe that Schultz is running a crooked game.
George, you've been out of the Army 5 months now. You and your footlocker. And not one penny has come into this house.
Well, Alice, I told you not to quit your job. Now, let's don't make a big deal of it.
George, it's time you realize you have a wife and baby to support. You've got to work.
Work?
Yes.
Alice, didn't I fight a war for you?
So did Eisenhower. But you don't see his family starving. He didn't take to loafing just because the war was over. He went out and got himself a job as president.
Yeah, and you know how he got that job, too, don't you? Politics, that's how. Alice, if you'll excuse me, this is the time of day I usually wind my watch. This is the time of day.
Now, listen, George. If you don't go out today and find a job, you'll blame me for the consequences. George, you've got to think of somebody besides yourself. You've got to think of me.
Alice. Didn't I fight a war for you?
So did Eisenhower.
Well, you can see how a guy can't stand that kind of nagging too long. A little bit after that, I got out of bed. Or I say a little bit after that. It wasn't really a little bit. I say a little bit, you know, but it wasn't a little bit. I say a little bit, but it wasn't really a little bit. It was the following spring that I got out. That's the way it was. And anyway, we have another cookie, Fred.
Look, George, I hate to be stubborn about this thing, but I still feel I ought to be doing something.
Well, Fred, you're a guest.
I
You
know,
see
but you're
that-
wasting me, George. I'm fairly versatile. I sing a little. Well, like in that last sketch you did just there. I could have played something in that.
Look, it was just Judith Ames playing Alice and me playing me. Now, Fred, what could you have played?
The saxophone.
But, Fred, I saw the Cane Mutiny, and I thought you were great. Now, you
Thank you.
started that mutiny. Now, let's don't start another one here. And see, it's not that I have anything at all against the way you start mutinies, because I'll say this, you are a pretty good old mutiny starter when you get started starting one. But the idea is we just don't have the facilities here for a court-martial.
Okay, George. That's your attitude. I won't interrupt you. Go ahead with your story.
Well, I'm not going ahead with the story.
No.
We'll go ahead with a movie. It's called Dial S for Soap.
All right now, folks. I just want you to take a car. Just any car at all.
Fred, you promise you're not going to interrupt. Now, come on,
No,
let's
I'm
go.
sorry.
Have a cookie, will you?
I don't want it. What are you going to do?
What am I going to do? I'm going to go on with my story. That's what I'm going to do. So after that, you see, I finally coaxed myself down to an employment agency. And the first thing this fella had me do is sign my name on the back of the application under some very small, fine print. And I could see they'd been in business for quite a while. Now, see, I've always been a pretty shrewd kid, so I said, what was that I just signed there?
Well, Mr. Gobel's really nothing. Merely a contract guarantee under the terms of which you remit a nominal portion of your earnings to the agency on a fee-service basis.
Yeah, well, how small is the nominal portion I'm supposed to remit to this here agency?
Your first 3 months' salary.
Well, now, isn't that a little bit steep?
Well, it's for your benefit, Mr. Gobel. After all, if we're going to take 3 months of your salary, we're going to get you the highest paid job we can. Now, aren't we?
Sure you are.
Now, the first thing we should do is try to find what position is best suited to your aptitudes. Well, shall we look? Now, let's see what we have here. Oh, yes. Nuclear physicist? Thermodynamic technician? Investment analyst? No. Oh, here's a good one. Antibiotic research chemist.
Ditch digger? Sheep herder? No, must have own crook. Taffy apple twister? Geiger counter?
Wait a minute, Mr. Gobel. Here is a great one. United Plumbers have an opening. Are you by any chance a steam fitter?
Well, now it all depends on what I have to fit this steam into here.
Frankly, Mr. Gobel, I found it very difficult to place a man with your particulars.
Well, I don't understand about all this particular business because I'm not too particular. I know what kind of job I want. I want a job that pays about $30 an hour, 1 day a week, time and a half for overtime, a partnership maybe, here maybe.
Mr. Gobel, that has all the earmarks of a dirty, un-American statement.
Friend, you're not questioning my patriotism.
I am.
Friend, didn't I fight a war for you?
So did Eisenhower.
Well, see, I could have stayed in bed and heard that, you know. But at least you all know how I happened to get started in this business, or at least you know I didn't happen to get started in any other particular business, you know.
George.
Huh?
George, you got any more cookies?
No, but we do have just a little bit of time here, and I think if we hurry up, you'll have a chance now to play your saxophone.
Oh, thanks, George, but I don't want it now.
Well, how about a couple card tricks?
No.
A scene from one of your pictures?
No. I'll tell you, George, I've been sitting here thinking, and I've decided that you're right. A guest just be a guest. Well, I'm your guest, George, and your sponsor's guest, right?
Yes, George Gobel and Fred McMurray have been brought to you by the makers of Dial Shampoo, the new shampoo that gives your hair a diamond sparkle. And mild, fragrant Dial soap that stops perspiration odor before it starts.
Yes, sir, George, you've got the idea. A guest just ought to take his pay and take it easy.
Well, I'll be a dirty bird.
Want me to come back next week?
I'm not even sure I'm going to be back here next week.
Oh, yes. Yes, next week the George Gobel Show will be brought to you by Pet Evaporated Milk. and Instant Pet Non-Fat Dry Milk.
And now, Fred, that we've heard from my sponsors, would you like to say a word from yours?
Oh, yes, I would, George. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred McMurray appeared on this program tonight through the courtesy of June Hafer.
Next week, our guest will be Angela Lansbury, and we hope we'll see you all again. And until then, this is your old friend, Lonesome George, hoping to be among the very first to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
In tonight's cast, Judith Ames was Alice, and Bob Jellison was that fussy little man. The George Gobel Show is a Gomalco production.